Have you ever looked around you at your job, your phone, your relationships, even your goals, and thought, why does none of this feel exciting anymore? You used to feel something, wonder, curiosity, fire. But now it all feels flat, dull. Like you're living behind glass, watching your life happen but not in it. You scroll, you consume, you achieve, you try, but the thrill has faded. The highs aren't high anymore. The lows are just numbness. And the question becomes not just what's wrong with me, but something deeper, something more existential. What's wrong with the world? What's wrong with reality itself? Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers to ever live, believed this numbness wasn't a flaw in your brain chemistry or a failure of ambition. It was a spiritual signal, a soul-level message. And if you're willing to listen, it might just lead you back to the source of your aliveness. Jung believed that modern people suffer not from a lack of resources or opportunity, but from a lack of connection to meaning. We're drowning in information but starving for wisdom. We've replaced lived experience with curated images. We've traded the mystery of life for control, safety, and predictability. But the soul doesn't care about comfort. It craves depth. It craves transformation. And when we stop feeding it the nourishment of real experience, of risk, of awe, of mystery, it starts to go silent. That silence is the boredom you feel. That silence is the emptiness behind your achievements. Jung called this the loss of soul, not in the religious sense, but in the psychological one. The soul is the part of you that longs for wholeness. It's not content with surface-level existence. It wants to become, and when you ignore that part of yourself long enough, life starts to lose its color.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Think of how we chase excitement today. We binge shows. We scroll endlessly. We buy things we don't need. We pursue goals that aren't even ours. All in the name of feeling something, anything, but nothing satisfies. Why? Because the soul doesn't respond to dopamine. It responds to depth. It responds to inner truth. Jung said that every individual has an unconscious, a vast, powerful realm beneath the surface of your awareness where your real desires, fears, dreams, and memories live. And when you live only on the surface, when you never dive into that unconscious world, you cut yourself off from the source of your vitality. You become two-dimensional. A character playing a role. You may be productive, impressive, even envied, but you won't be alive. Not in the deepest sense. And this is what Jung was warning us about. That we've become so outwardly focused, so obsessed with appearances and performance, that we've forgotten to live from the inside out. But here's the deeper tragedy. We're not even aware that we're disconnected. Our culture doesn't teach us to go inward. It teaches us to optimize, to compete, to perform. We ask kids what they want to do when they grow up, not who they want to be. We reward perfection over authenticity, speed over depth, stimulation over reflection. And so we grow up disconnected from ourselves. We don't know what we feel, what we want, what we fear, or what we truly long for. We know how to get likes. We know how to win approval. But do we know how to listen to our inner life? Jung believed that true excitement, the kind that doesn't burn out after a few minutes, comes from engaging with the unknown within ourselves. It comes from confronting the parts of us we've exiled, our wounds, our shadows, our forgotten dreams, and reintegrating them into consciousness. What if the reason nothing feels exciting anymore is because you've stopped evolving? So ask yourself this: when was the last time you did something not because it would look good, not because it would impress anyone, but because it spoke to something deep in your soul? When was the last time you were still enough to hear your own intuition? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be bad at something just to feel alive doing it? Jung would say that the answer to your boredom is not more stimulation, it's more integration. You don't need more stuff. You need more self. More connection to the mystery of who you are becoming, more willingness to face the parts of yourself you've denied. Because nothing feels exciting anymore when you're living only from the ego. But when you start living from the self, from the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, every moment becomes sacred. Even the mundane becomes meaningful. Because then, you're not just surviving, you're becoming. Why your repressed self is the key to feeling alive again. If you feel like life has gone numb, like you're moving through your days in grayscale, Carl Jung would ask you not what you're doing, but what you're avoiding. Because the key to your lost vitality isn't out there, it's buried within. Jung believed that the parts of yourself you repress, your anger, your wildness, your sensuality, your ambition, your grief, don't disappear. They go underground. They become what he called the shadow. And here's the twist. The shadow isn't just your dark side. It's also your unlived life. The life you never gave yourself permission to live. The words you never spoke. The risks you never took. The true self you never allowed to emerge. And when those parts stay locked away, you lose access to your own energy. Your spirit shrinks. Your life becomes a performance and not a very satisfying one. You may be wondering, why would I repress such vital parts of myself? Why would I choose a life of dullness over one of passion? But that's the thing, you didn't choose it. It was chosen for you, by your conditioning. By your family, by your culture. You were taught, directly or indirectly, that certain parts of you were unacceptable, too much, too dangerous, too embarrassing. So you pushed them down. You became good. You became acceptable. But in doing so, you also became incomplete. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's not just psychology, that's a roadmap. Because once you understand that your shadow is running the show from behind the scenes, you can begin the real work, not of suppressing it further, but of reclaiming it. What does that look like in practice? It means turning toward the very things you've spent your life avoiding. The uncomfortable feelings, the irrational desires, the parts of you that scare you, the fantasies you think are inappropriate. The rage you've buried under politeness, the grief you've numbed with productivity. Jung's process of individuation, becoming a whole human being, requires you to face these parts, not to indulge them blindly, but to understand them. Because within your shadow is raw energy, creative power, passion, direction. It's the fuel for your becoming. And if you've been walking through life feeling dead inside, it might be because your life is too small for your soul. You've outgrown the mask, and the real you, the full, unfiltered, unpolished you, is knocking on the door, asking to be let in. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Excitement doesn't return when life gets easier. It returns when you get real, when you stop pretending, when you stop editing your feelings, when you stop curating your personality for approval. Jung saw this clearly. He believed that most psychological suffering comes not from trauma itself, but from our refusal to integrate it, from our refusal to feel what's actually there. And the moment you start to feel again, really feel, you begin to live again. You cry, yes. You rage, yes. But you also laugh again. You create. You fall in love. You risk. Yokar. Because the numbness you feel isn't a lack of emotion. It's the weight of all the emotions you've refused to feel. And when you finally let them move through you, life comes rushing back in. So I'll ask you the question that might change everything. What part of yourself have you exiled in order to be accepted? And what would it mean to bring that part home? Could it be that the very thing you're ashamed of is the key to your creativity? Could it be that your anger is trying to protect your boundaries? That your sadness is trying to reconnect you with what matters? That your jealousy is revealing a dream you've abandoned? These aren't flaws, they're signals, they're invitations. And if you're willing to stop rejecting your shadow, to stop living as only half of yourself, you might just rediscover the thrill you've been chasing in all the wrong places. Not in a new job, not in a new relationship, but in the mirror, in the voice that whispers, I'm still here. I never left. Are you ready to come home? How to feel deeply alive without needing a new life. We often believe that to feel alive again, something drastic must happen. A new job, a spontaneous trip, a breakup, a breakthrough, a reinvention. But Carl Jung offers a different vision, one far more radical, far more unsettling, and far more liberating. He suggests that you don't need a new life to feel alive. You need a new relationship with the life you already have. Because here's the truth. Aliveness doesn't come from your circumstances. It comes from your consciousness, from the depth with which you engage your own experience, from how fully you show up to the present moment. The novelty wears off, the external changes fade, but depth never stops giving. And it begins the moment you stop trying to escape your life and start trying to meet it. The reason so many of us feel bored, unmotivated, or stuck isn't because our lives are inherently boring. It's because we've stopped being curious. We go through the motions. We brush our teeth, commute to work, talk to our partners, scroll through our feeds, and we label it all as nothing special. But what if the problem isn't the moment itself, but the state of mind we bring to it? Jung believed that when we lose connection to the symbolic dimension of life, we lose the capacity for wonder. Everything becomes literal, mechanical, transactional. We stop asking the bigger questions. We stop seeing the mythic layer beneath the ordinary. But if you look closely, if you really look, every moment contains a hidden message. Every emotion is a portal. Every relationship is a mirror. And every challenge is an initiation. The question is, are you willing to see your life as symbolic again? Are you willing to live with depth, not just duration? You don't need to quit your job to feel alive. You need to ask, what part of me have I silenced in this job? What truth have I stopped speaking? What gift have I stopped giving? You don't necessarily need a new partner. You need to ask, when did I stop showing up with presence? When did I trade intimacy for predictability? When did I decide there was nothing left to explore? Jung would tell us that boredom is not an external condition. It's an internal disconnection. It's the psyche's way of saying, you've outgrown your current level of consciousness. And that doesn't mean burn it all down. It means wake up, go deeper, ask better questions, live with more soul. Because when you do, even the simplest experience, a walk, a conversation, a sunset, can become deeply moving. Not because the world changed, but because you did. One of the most profound things Jung taught is that we are not just individuals, we are living symbols. Every one of us carries something archetypal, something ancient and sacred: the lover, the warrior, the healer, the seeker, the creator. And when we lose touch with these archetypes, when we reduce ourselves to functions and roles, we stop feeling like we matter. But when you remember that your story is part of something bigger, you begin to live with purpose again. Not the kind of purpose that sounds good on a resume, but the kind that makes your chest burn and your eyes water. The kind that whispers, this is why you're here. And sometimes that purpose isn't flashy. Sometimes it's as quiet as choosing presence over distraction, integrity over approval, depth over speed. That's where the flame begins to reignite. Not in extremes, but in the sacred ordinary. So let me leave you with this final question, one that Jung himself might have asked if he were sitting across from you right now. What would it look like to live your life as if it were speaking directly to your soul? Not just happening to you, but for you. What if every unloved part of yourself, every moment of boredom, every quiet ache in your heart wasn't a problem to fix, but a message to decode? What if the numbness you feel is not a sign that something is wrong, but a signal that something deeper is waiting to be born? You don't need a new life. You need a new lens, one that sees meaning where others see monotony, one that listens where others scroll, one that dares to feel even when it hurts. That's how you become fully alive again. That's how you remember what it means to be. If this video stirred something in you, don't rush to distract yourself. Sit with it. Let it echo. Let it guide you. And maybe ask yourself this one last thing before you go. What small act could I take today, not to fix my life, but to deepen it? Because sometimes the smallest shift in perspective is all it takes to bring the soul back to the surface. And when the soul returns, so does the excitement. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that hums beneath everything, whispering you're home.